Hey guys, this is Christ is Truth 1. I'm coming to you today. I know I haven't made videos in a really long time, but something interesting has happened. I actually got in a conversation with Philosophyman76, and it's turning kind of crazy because this guy, I like to call him Philosophy Boy, he, in one of his videos, and it's called, let me pull up that video real quick. It's called How to Deal with Religious Apologists. That's Philosophyman76, How to Deal with Religious Apologists. Now, in this video, he says a lot of bad stuff in this video. It just is not really, doesn't stick. But there's something that he does say. He makes an absolute claim that there is insufficient evidence for the existence of God, or for at least for him to believe in God. That there is sufficient evidence for him to believe in God. That's an absolute claim. That is actually a positive claim. But here's my question. I asked him, what would be sufficient evidence for you to believe in God? Now, to answer that, he replies with a question. He said something along the lines, you can go and read the comment section. It's really long, maybe a few days. And he says, whatever evidence you have for God is the evidence I will use to believe in God. And he keeps saying he'll agree with me, which is insane. I mean, I don't understand where he gets that logic from. But here you go. I said, well, you know, you've already heard the arguments from this individual. My opinion doesn't matter. Because, I mean, we're not discussing me. We're not discussing whatever I presented. I've made no positive claims. And that's one thing I've been doing lately, people. I do not make any claims, okay? I don't say God exists. I don't say any of those things because I'm questioning the atheist. I want to find out why they believe I should be an atheist. And if there is no evidence for God, I want to see the evidence for atheism or the reasons for it. And there really isn't. But here's the here's the thing that just doesn't get me with this guy. I said, well, I need to know what would be sufficient evidence for you to believe in God, because what is sufficient for one person is not sufficient enough for another. Okay? I mean, that's entirely subjective. We're talking about philosophical views here, a worldview that you cannot scientifically prove objectively. Therefore, what is sufficient for one is not sufficient for the other. So what would be sufficient evidence for you to believe in God? It is an honest question. If he makes a positive claim that there's insufficient evidence for God, he needs to give me an answer. What would be sufficient? Now, when I asked him this, he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know what would be sufficient evidence. It could be a million things. And I said, really? Like what? At least name me one. He couldn't do it. He says, it could be many things. I said, well, great. Give me one. Give me one. I want to know. He couldn't do it. But here's what I find kind of strange. How do you not know what is sufficient and yet know that something is insufficient? Do you understand? That's like me saying, I've never eaten chicken, but a burger does not taste like chicken. Well, if you've never eaten chicken, how do you know the burger doesn't taste like chicken? Do you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. Then he goes on and he says, well, he kind of changes the argument a little bit. He says, because at first he was saying, whatever evidence is for God, that's the evidence I'll use to believe in God. And then he changes it up. He says, whatever evidence you use to believe in dragons is the evidence I will use to believe in God. He says something almost along that line there. And you can go back and read it. Okay? Now, that doesn't make sense either, because that's like asking me to use a rose to prove a tiger or a lion. It makes no sense. Even if you assume or believe God does not exist, by definition, these are two different entities. They're two different things. So how do you use a dragon to prove God? It makes no sense. Philosophyman76, or as I like to call him, Philosophy Boy, has bad philosophy. He then goes on his other YouTube videos and requests other atheists to come and debate me because he can't. He's a coward. So then they come on and they start attacking me. And so, hey, I go on the offensive, man. I go back. Sure. You know, they start attacking me and attacking all this stuff and start asking me questions. See, that's what he wants. He can't answer for his atheism. So like a coward, he brings his friends on to go do it. You know, it's just ridiculous. And I sent him a PM message, and to which he replied the next day, which was this morning. And then I wrote him back, and he says, I do not reply to PMs. Which is a lie, because he just did. Even if he wrote that on there, he did reply. So, and the reason why he won't reply is because the guy's a coward. Philosophyman76, answer the question. You can't answer it because you know you have no reason that is sufficient enough to disbelieve in God. Okay? You disbelieve in God because you want to. You don't like the concept of God. You don't like the idea of God, especially the biblical God, if he exists. Right? Okay. So, those of you out there who ever decides to debate Philosophyman76, a.k.a. Philosophy Boy, remember that. The guy is a little deceptive. He's very clever in his deception. He's dishonest. But, hey, you know what? I'll make another video later on if he replies. And really just answer the question. I've never made no claims. He goes on to tell me that in a court of law, you know, the person making the claim has to provide evidence. I've made no claims. I've said nothing. I never said God existed. I didn't say anything. I asked you a question, and then you replied to me and trying to get me to answer a question and try to make a claim, which I never made. I've made no claims, nothing. I simply asked you a question, and you cannot answer it. You assume everything. So, Philosophyman76, answer the question. You made the positive claim that there is insufficient evidence for you to believe in God. What would be sufficient evidence for you to believe in God? You come back around and you start saying, well, I already answered that. I don't know. Well, if you don't know, how do you know what is sufficient and insufficient? If you don't know what's sufficient, how the heck are you supposed to know what is insufficient? If you've never eaten chicken, how do you know a burger doesn't taste like chicken? Ludicrous. Ludicrous. Bad philosophy. That's why atheism is not true. They cannot defend it. Shock of God was right. I'll see you guys later. God bless.